So what I wanted to ask you is, what's the status of the theme song?
I haven't done shit. I mean,
Not a thing.
no.
None of it.
I'm trying to clean the fucking room so I can get motivated to do work on it.
Oh, okay. But you're solidly at the starting to think about maybe doing something about
Yeah, no, I'm going.
clearing the path.
That's
to
the first thing I'm
towards
gonna
it.
do. That's where I'm at musically with everything. But that's the first thing I'm gonna do when I get
The room cleaned,
yeah.
which
when I
is
get,
the first thing that you have to do.
Yeah, step one is getting the room to be a workable environment. It's kind of sad. It's dusty.
So it's like really the second thing you're gonna do.
What's the first thing musically I'm gonna do?
First thing musically.
When I pick up my fucking guitar, it's the first shit I'm gonna record. I'm gonna record anything else.
Okay. What's it gonna sound like though?
Welcome to Artistic Mission. My name is Dan Jabor, and I will be your host and guide as we explore the visual arts together. Since this is the first episode, I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself, who I am, where I've been, and what I'm all about. I decided to be an artist in second grade. Won a few awards once I got into high school. Despite failing intro to art, I still decided it was something I wanted to do. I worked mostly on illustration and drawings, comic books, things like that. That's kind of where I thought I'd go with it. Never went to college, worked plenty of terrible jobs. Art sort of fell, to the wayside until maybe about 10 years ago. I heard about an art contest and read about it in the paper. I ended up winning third place in my category. From there, I met other artists. They told me about other shows, other contests. I did those, where at each of those I met more artists, and they told me about new things, and it all kind of snowballed from there. I got kind of serious into painting, and after several months of doing multiple shows, for a while I was doing 3 a month, I became a resident artist at Soulard Art Market and Contemporary Gallery. They're still there. They've since changed their name to the just Soulard Art Gallery. I became the director of the gallery. I did that for a year. And about 5 years ago, I was part of a group of artists who went to Indonesia for a cultural exchange. It was a lot of fun. I wrote about that pretty extensively on my blog, which is under the same name as this show, Artistic Mission. If you want to go to the website, danjabor.com/podcast, in the show notes for this episode, I'll post a link to that section of the blog if people want to read it and check out. I did like a post a day the entire trip, so that's something you can check out if you want to. By this time, I had also picked up doing photography. I got tired of using other people's stuff, other people's photos and things as reference, so I wanted to create my own original reference for my paintings. I was into portraiture for a bit, so Photoshop cobble 10 or 15 different pictures together to make the elements that I want together, and then I just paint it using that kind of as a rough guide. I actually got to where I've probably won more awards and gotten more recognition for photography than painting, which is odd because it was always a secondary medium to me. Photos from that Indonesia trip were actually my most recent solo show, which was a photography show, and that was maybe a little over a year ago as of now. After I got back from the trip, I was on the board of directors for Art Dimensions. I helped run one of they had space at that time in 2720, which is like a performing arts center and concert venue, and they had art galleries upstairs. They had more than one in the building. For a short time, I was in charge of one of them before we ended up leaving that space. And, put together a couple shows there. Did a lot of behind-the-scenes work and stuff, like the art detours that they did, which were like big like bus tours that would go around to different art galleries in the city. That was like a twice annual event that they did. After doing that for a couple of years, I decided that I wasn't focusing as much on my artwork. I was doing a lot more helping other people get their stuff going than I was actually working on my own stuff. Hadn't sold a painting or anything in a long time, and it felt like I was putting it off to the side again. So I decided to try to focus back on my own work. So we shifted gears again. Now mostly what I've been doing for maybe the last year or two has been a lot of mixed media. A lot of the paintings and things that I was doing, even from early days, had a lot of elements of other things in them. You know, either being based off of my photographs or having textural elements, or I liked using a lot of the mediums and things like that that give paint texture and things. So, I mean, even the paintings that I made were very textural and odd. So I kind of realized that that was the direction that I needed to go into. I've been messing a lot with collages, but using things that have genuine provenance. So instead of getting like a modern replica of an old map and using that as a background, I will actually find a 7,500-year-old map and use that as the background, because I think the actual original object has a bit of a soul. The other thing I've been doing is thinking about starting this show. As my blog kind of wound down, I started listening to podcasts a lot. I saw that there was a window, because when I started really getting into it, I was looking around for our other art podcasts, and I couldn't really find any. I could find plenty that were based on music. I could find plenty that were based on dance, on theater, on very narrow niches within the broad spectrum of arts. But anything that was advertised as an arts podcast, they focused on everything. And I really was just interested in, you know, the visual mediums, painting, photography, sculpture, even performance art, you know, the weird Maria Abramovich type performance art. So I decided that somebody needed to make one. And since there was a void that could be filled, I figured I might as well give it a shot. The other thing I also found was that most art podcasts are incredibly boring. So I wanted to try to make one that's not boring. So if you are ever listening to this and you feel like you're being bored, send me an email at podcast@danjabor.com. Let me know what you think about the show. I'm accessible. You can contact me. So in the interest of starting things out, my first episode, I did an interview with Cindy Royal, who is an artist who, when I very first got into Soulard Art Market, the gallery I told you about a minute ago, when I very first got involved with them, she was the person that pushed me towards that said, hey, this is something possible. Because to me at that time, it seemed really unattainable, and that I wasn't, you know, that my work wasn't good enough, or I didn't have enough work. And, you know, it was actually a valuable stepping stone towards me getting to where I'm at now. You know, it was a very important step in my journey. I'm going to do an episode about this at some other point, but the whole notion that bootstrapping is bullshit, that you don't really pull a lot of people love that myth of pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. And, you know, I did this all myself. And, you know, I remember I even fell into that myself. But when I really think about it, it's not, you know, hard work does play into it. It does. But so does luck, and so does other people, I mean, just helping you out. I mean, think about how many times you've gotten a job or gotten somebody else a job just based on a recommendation. It happens. And it's a vital thing, and I think people are ashamed of it or don't like to mention it because they feel like it's unfair. But people help each other out all the time. So, you know, hopefully you'll find this show helpful. Maybe I'll introduce you to some ideas or people who change your life. I know a lot of artists I want to highlight on this show, but I'm going to start out with somebody who helped bring me up and out. I went from being alone, thinking that I was the only weird artist by myself somewhere, you know, struggling at this by myself. And she kind of opened up and showed me that there was a larger world and that there were other artists out there like me. It was the first time I had friends who I felt like were actually peers, you know, when I was there. So, you know, and I'm friends with a lot of those people to this day. So, and she helped make that happen. So, it's not the greatest interview in the world, because it was the first one I've ever done. I've done a few more since then. I feel like I'm getting better at it. Bear with it, since this is the first episode, and if you're new to the show, this is probably where you're starting out. Sorry, it does get better, I promise. And take it away. Here's Cindy Royal.
You're one of those people that knows everybody. How do you pull that?
Because
How do you
I'm
pull that
old.
off? No,
I've
it
been
has
doing this for a long time.
I don't think it has anything to do with that, because like there's younger people starting out who, like, I'll say, oh, I've met this person, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know, I've known them forever, and or somebody who I've just heard of. Like you'll mention, you'll be like, oh yeah, and then you'll tell me like 8,000 details about them.
Well, I think that I was out there a whole lot more, so I think I was able to meet and somehow kind of remember different things about different people, and maybe something to do with having been involved with the gallery. Of course, that's been quite a few years ago now.
Right, but I mean, even so recently, you've done the same thing.
Well, I don't know. I can't really explain that one then.
I've always thought that was like your secret superpower, is that you're one of those people that knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody who's like very largely a hermit and never gets out that much.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have some contacts, that's all.
So what's the Evelyn question? Why?
What's my inspiration?
What's your inspiration?
It doesn't matter what I make. She will say, what is your inspiration to do that? And sometimes I just start painting, and then whatever the paint starts to do on the canvas, I'll just go with it. I'll just let it happen. And I'll see something in what I'm painting, and it'll just turn into that. Sometimes I actually want to do something, to work through something in my head. Maybe possibly if I lose one of my animal friends or something, I'll have to paint just to get through the sadness or get through the grieving period, and then I will try to do something, maybe not exactly paint them, but paint something that reminds me of them or something that I've experienced with them, and I will just go from there. And sometimes if I just feel like painting, I'll just paint a crow, or I'll paint another bird or something like that, just because it's so easy for me to do that.
So you kind of switch back and forth from having a set idea when you start out versus just going with whatever happens.
Right. What was good for me, and what was always a good motivating factor, was when there was a group called Art Co-op, and there would be a monthly theme. I always liked doing themed shows because it would make me think like more into not even thinking outside the box, because that's not even where I was going with that, but it would help me to have some sort of focus with what I was going to create next.
Right.
You know, if it was a black and white theme, well, then I'd be working with black and white. It wouldn't matter. You just have to do whatever you thought about with that. Or if there was like there was a show one time called Janus One, which was the January show for Art Co-op, and I was like, well, what in the world would you do for that? And it's just the new beginning kind of a theme was what that was going for. So I would enjoy doing those. And very few shows right now are themed shows, as far as I can tell. It's usually like group shows or bring whatever you want. Or that would.
Do you feel like there's more or less people out there putting work out right now? I mean, I know it kind of with these kind of things, they ebb and flow just like anything else. Like, you know, some things come in and out of fashion. But do you feel like that there's like fewer people out there making new work, and that maybe that these shows not being themed are because an open theme show is going to make it easier for people to draw in entries?
Oh, see, to me that's not easier, but it's possible, Dan. I don't know. It's easier for me to know that there's a theme and I have something to work with, or I have to try to focus on something, but maybe other people don't feel that way. I don't know. Do you like doing themed shows?
I don't know. Early on, I always thought that they kind of, the same way you're saying. Like I found like they would guide me a little bit.
Right.
You know, like how do I? But I always kind of approach things from like wanting to show range. Mm-hmm. And now that I've matured more, like I realize that the people who are out there doing what I want to do, they're not showing much range at all. They just do the same thing over and over again, and it's repeatable and it's expected and it's kind of boring.
Right.
But you know, you can be somebody, like you can be an artist that's for everybody and plays to the lowest common denominator and
Right.
make work that's not exciting but it's accessible to 90% of the population, and they'll just say, oh wow, that's art, and then they'll buy it. Or you can make stuff for like the other 5% of us who actually are artists and or people who have a decent sense of aesthetics. And the people who are like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what he did there, I can appreciate, you can, you're, it's kind of like the idea of being like, like an actor's actor,
Right.
being a comedian's comedian, some people are like the artists, they want they want to be able to walk down the street and say like, oh, you're the guy that did that.
Right.
And then other people are just like, nobody's gonna like what I do, but maybe the 5 people who actually get it, who could do something close to it,
Right. Well, and 90% of the time, I'm just making something because it'll probably just hang on my wall. So I make something that I'm going to want to look at, or that I feel like I just want to work with, or I'll find something and have to go with creating something around it, because I have a habit of finding pieces of metal and pieces of who knows what parts of things.
How long have you been making artwork, like in any sort of a serious capacity?
Oh, I don't know. I would say doing shows and things like that, probably, I don't really even know, but I would assume for the past 20 years I've been probably selling something. If
Yeah.
that's what you're going for as far as...
I mean, I think like there's a lot of people
about
that feel the call like to create things from school age.
Right,
You
and
know,
I
and
did.
they get that. Like everybody, I think with every artist, when you ask them that, like, there'll be a moment in their life where it kind of clicked and they said, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And then there's a moment later on where something clicks and they're like, I'm going to do this for real.
Right. Yeah, well, and I used to do other things too, so I did the music thing for a long time, and then I realized that there's probably a shelf life on DJs, but you can be an artist until you die, so
Yeah.
there's no age limits.
You're one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because like you were one of like the first people that was really encouraging to me when I like was very first getting started.
Well, because your work was very open and you had all these different ideas and different things that you did, which kind of reminded me of me because I work in a lot of different forms of art. I like doing different things with different, I like sculpting and painting and finding things and gluing them together and all that. So I thought that it was kind of a similar vein.
Okay.
I don't do the video thing though. You got into that too. So.
Well, when I did, I know like I think I met you. It was at an art co-op show, and it was I'm imagining probably one of the lowest points of that group's existence, because I had heard when they first started out that they did like bigger shows in bigger places, and let me paint a picture for you. When the art was hanging up in 2 different places, technically the Central West End, like on paper, but like on the very sketchy outer edge.
The very outer edge.
The very sketchy outer edge of the Central West End, where it was just really like people just kind of bought some buildings and were trying to fix them up.
Right.
One building was like full of non-profit. It was like an office building that was full of non-profit groups had space in this kind of rundown old office building, and then across the street from that there was a place that had been renovated into a gym, and they had stuff hanging in the basement of the gym so that people could be just walking on a treadmill for an hour looking at your picture, which I guess is kind of nice. But as far as a place where you're expecting people to see your work, like you're not places where you'd get buyers necessarily.
Right.
And
but you never know.
And paid money to be there.
Right.
And it was just like, we had to get buzzed into the building I was like, people aren't just going to walk in, and I just couldn't believe it, and I wasn't going to do another show with that group because I was like, this is ridiculous. But that night I met you, and then, we got, you can convince me to enter a show at Soulard, and, a couple months later I was in the gallery full time, and then
you were running the gallery.
And then I ran the gallery
right.
for a year. That was one of those situations though too, where it's like in the cartoons where a person, like they ask everybody to volunteer. We need 3 volunteers or whatever, and it's like the volunteer is the person who didn't step backwards in unison.
Ah, yes, right. Yeah, I understand that. But so what was your point?
No, I'm just saying like that's why I wanted to talk to you, because
okay.
that really you were one of the first people that was really encouraging to me. So now I'm starting something new, and I figure we're better than go back to that.
Paying it forward. Starting.
Paying it forward.
I do appreciate that, Dan. Yeah. I think, like I said, I think that the reason that I did talk to you is, I liked your, just, the first show that you did at Soulard was the music show, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you really got to know.
I really got to know you. I watched you berate a guy, violently berate a guy for pricing his artwork too much, and I was like,
yeah.
And my painting was the same price as his.
No.
Yeah,
no,
it was.
Not quite. Oh, okay.
No, it was like, because the painting I did was like of my dad with the guitar.
Yep. Okay.
And I didn't plan to sell it, but I was too new. I didn't know that you could just write not for sale.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know you could. I didn't know about the NFS.
Yeah. All right.
So I had no idea about that. And what I did was, I was like, well, I'll put more money on there than what anybody would pay me for it.
Right.
Because I got it custom framed, and it was very expensive, and
it was a good painting.
I was like, but I was like $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
Because I figured like nobody's gonna pay that much for it. And this other guy had, God, who was?
I know who it was. I'm not
okay.
naming names.
No.
Yeah, I feel bad about it. Yeah. And he's a nice man.
But you berated this poor guy for like 5 minutes about like, this gallery, like there's nobody here, like this place just opened.
Nobody's gonna pay that. Where do you think you are? I can go back in my head. Yeah.
And like I'm standing 5 feet away, and I'm just cringing because I'm like,
I'm next.
I'm
Is that
next.
What you're thinking?
I'm next.
Yeah. I probably, what's really funny, I think I've mellowed a little bit since then. That's why that's why when you asked me about would I want to do that again, probably not. I probably wouldn't want to have to deal with people again. I might really tell them what I thought.
I have a theory though, like it's something that I've noticed in my life, the situations where I'm the least comfortable, like, or where I look back on, like times in my life when I look back on things being like fondly. I look back on this and I look back on an event and I'm like, if I really sit and think about it, like these wonderful things that happen, like in the moment, I was fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Like if you look back on any painting that you're proud of, think about how you felt when you were actually making it. You're like, I can't wait to be done with this thing.
Oh, yeah.
But then you look back on it, you're like, it doesn't hurt anymore once you're out of it, and you're like, oh yeah, that was great.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I'll go back and paint over something just because.
Yeah.
I think we all do that though.
And destroy stuff. Yeah. I've done that. A couple. I think over the summertime, I threw a bunch in a fire pit.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't do that. You can always paint over them.
Yeah, but I don't know. Some certain things you can't just paint over. I guess that can be argued or whatever.
What do you do? Everybody disposes of or gets rid of their feelings in a certain way or whatever they don't want around anymore. So
Yeah, I mean, I made a video of burning them and posted it online. People, and people were kind of freaked out by that. Actually, it was weird.
yeah, well, I bet. Other ones were probably wanting to go and resurrect the frame pieces that were left. So, yeah. My robots are some of my favorite things.
What are some of your favorite pieces?
Yeah, my favorite pieces are things. I will find something, usually on the ground. I'll pick up something and it'll be probably a piece of metal or plastic or part off of a car. I'll have to clean it, and then I'll work with whatever it feels like it could be. And a lot of them get turned into robots. And they don't really have to be robots, but they're little blocks of wood. They usually have arms or legs or something, or wheels.
Is there any significance to the fact that they're robots, or?
I think because instead of having a stuffed animal when I was a child, I would sleep with a robot spaceship. And the D-cell batteries would leak into my pajamas at night.
So that's how it all
True.
started.
I think I still really like spaceships and robots and metal pieces. Not necessarily the batteries, but yeah. But that's probably where it came from. And that was before the first man landed on the moon, or walked on the moon. So.
Do you think there are any limits to the type of work that you do?
Well,
like any boundaries
yes,
or lines that you won't
I do think
cross?
that there are definitely boundaries I will not. I really don't like drawing people. And I've never had that desire to want to do any kind of portraiture work because I don't find people to be all that fascinating. And if somebody wanted a picture of themselves, I figured they would just take a picture of themselves. I don't really like even looking at people. I'd rather look at birds or something else that I find more pleasant. Now I do make some of my figures are kind of human-like, but not totally. They might have like claws.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of your animal pieces do have a lot of human quality and character to them.
Right. Because I probably treat my animals more like people than other people would.
Right.
And the fact that I communicate probably better with them than I do other people.
Now, you had mentioned when we were talking before that there are certain pieces that you look at them and you feel really a sense of an accomplishment that you finished it.
Or after I see them hanging up, I feel like, oh, that looks good after all. I kind of have that feeling. Because I will just paint just because I feel like painting. I just feel like I just want to paint today. I'm just going to paint. And I do that. And then when I finish something, it's like, oh, look, I'm okay with that. And sometimes there are a lot of unfinished pieces that I have. I've noticed that recently. I don't know why they're not finished. I don't know why I haven't gone back into them. And a lot of times those are the things that, well, I'll just paint over them and just start over. I just keep thinking that I did it for a reason, though. Like one piece in particular has the little triangular piece from a Ouija board attached to it. Underneath that, there's this little thing that came off of a firecracker kind of thing, a firework that I saw. So that's underneath the clear piece, and it says something about stop and something else. I don't remember the words. But I kept thinking, well, this is such a good thing. I need to put this there so that I'll be able to go with it. I don't know if it's on the wrong picture in the wrong place, but it's on this board and I mounted it very well, so I will probably go back into that piece someday. But I've never been able to finish it. And I have some other pieces I will probably just paint over or add something to. Those are the pieces that I think, when I did have a themed show kind of thing going on, I would grab one and say, okay, now I have to do this so that it will fit the theme. I'd be able to work with it.
Do you ever notice that there are, like when you're doing work with found objects, I mean, is it just that you find the object? What is it that makes an object special enough to stop and pick it up?
Oh, I'm pretty much like a crow. I'll pick up almost anything. But literally on the ground. I don't just, I'll...
So you just pick it up because it's there and not necessarily because you have something in mind for it, or you know it'll find its way into a piece eventually.
Well, it's funny. I used to do something when we lived in the other area that we lived in. We lived in Afton for years. Sometimes I would gather so much in one day. I don't know why there was so much trash on the streets there. Or I would gather the items from one day and try to turn that into an object, or try to turn that into one part of a painting, or put it onto a box or something, just with the found objects from one day.
All right, well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and hopefully
thank you.
You'll keep painting well into the future.
I will certainly try.
And hopefully we'll see some new work and shows from you next year.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All right.
I hope we're in a show together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you how you need to subscribe and upload and follow and check out everything, and that's wonderful, but I really don't care if you do or not. That being said, my website, if you want to find out more details about this podcast, see pictures of the interviewees, shit like that, just go to danjabor, DanJabor.com, and then do one of those /slashy things, and then type in the word podcast, PODCAST. That's it. Catch you next time.
Why do I tell you anything? Just get out.